From across the country, women signed up for the armed forces by the thousands. They were from different walks of life, but they came together as volunteers to help our nation overcome the unprecedented challenges of World War II. The 1930s was a time of violence and upheaval. The Nazis rose to power and began enacting their policies of terror. In 1939, they invaded Poland. In Asia, Japan was waging a brutal war with China and expanding its empire in the East. When the U.S. entered World War II, American forces were unprepared. And the only American women serving in uniform were members of the Army Nurse Corps and the Navy Nurse Corps. But in 1942, in an effort to release men for combat, and after decades of women fighting for a greater role in the military, the United States slowly began adding women's auxiliaries and reserves to different branches of the armed services. The Army created what would become the Women's Army Corps, or the WAC. The Navy created the WAVES, or Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Service. The Marine Corps created the Women Reservists. The Army Air Forces recruited civilian women pilots in a program known as the Women Air Force Service Pilots, or WASP. And the Coast Guard created the SPARS, which stood for their motto, Semper Paratus, always ready. Recruits signed up out of a sense of patriotism, adventure, and the desire to seize opportunities usually closed to women. They performed vital duties. Many worked as nurses. Others did the clerical and administrative work crucial to the functioning of the military. Women also drove trucks, repaired airplanes, rigged parachutes, and worked as laboratory technicians and radio operators. They cracked codes, gathered information in offices of cryptology and intelligence, and also ran switchboards, managed communications, and coordinated logistics and supplies around the world. While it was seldom celebrated, their work was indispensable to the national war effort. Many in Congress, the military, and the American public only accepted women in limited ways. They were restricted to specific jobs, prohibited from advancing to certain ranks, and were never to command men. Non-whites experienced additional resistance. African American servicewomen faced quotas and exclusion in the segregated military. Hispanic and Japanese American women also faced bias and discrimination. Despite these many barriers to success, American servicewomen persevered. The vast majority of women remained in the United States. As the war went on, more were ordered overseas. WASPs flew military planes across the home front. Waves and Marines were stationed everywhere from Honolulu to Washington, D.C. WACs were assigned to every theater of operation. And nurses were often near the front lines. While women were never assigned to active combat roles, Some were killed by enemy fire, and others were captured as prisoners of war. In all, nearly 350,000 American women served in World War II. Helping to turn the tide of the war and drive back Axis powers around the world. During our nation's time of crisis, American servicewomen answered the call, and each, in her own way, was a trailblazer.